Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. Well, in my search for all manner of practitioner, one right now who you will be hearing me talk with is, I think, of the next kind in his field. A combination of software engineering, music, storytelling, merging music with our emotions and our actions and our emotions is fascinating. And he does this as Chief Technology Officer of a new company called Weave, W-E-A-V. And you'll hear us at the end talk about where the E is. With the excitement of this conversation still in mind, I want you to now hear about our practitioner extraordinaire, Mansimran Singh. Folks, I'm out exploring again in the cyber world to connect with people who are fascinating and who also are producing practices that, in this instance, with Mani Singh, I'll edit that, is beyond fascinating. He is Chief Technical Officer of a relatively new and breaking through company called Weave. In this conversation, I think you're going to learn an awful lot about the future, at least the technology that's leading to change in our experience of music. And I certainly look forward to that. So, Mansimran Singh, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's pretty exciting.
What do you think I was rambling about there a moment ago, about how, you are working on the future and your practice in music is quite different than I suspect almost anyone I know. And I know a lot of people in music.
Yeah. So I think although our company is focused on music, the core of our company is really building creator tools and new music technology to allow people to express themselves in new ways. And what we do here is we've created a new format for music that takes like a linear song, a song that you play on Spotify, and can turn it into an adaptive track and an interactive experience. So you can adapt in real time using our technology to the experience that you're in, whether that's like a video game or some sort of a digital interactive experience, or even if it's like, your workout or like a soundtrack to your life, which gets really exciting because the sort of like the last 150 years of the innovation in the recorded music space has been focused a lot on capturing the best recording and delivering the best recording.
Yes.
And as we go more digital, we can start to think of music as a non-linear thing, and instead start writing almost recipes for how the composition should be performed when it is being heard. So this allows for a new interactive media experience, which we call Weave. It's a package of our creator tools, our integration into video games, launching interactive music NFT collections, and like tokenizing the music so that the rewards mechanism and the composition can be on the chain, and really hope to kickstart a new creator economy.
I am breathless. And it's not just because I'm almost 80. I just hearing what you just said, Manny, is totally exciting, in part because the language that you're speaking with is definitely the language that you use in relationships, but it's also, I predict, using terms and its result in ways that most people someday, very soon, will be incorporating into their lexicon. As a person says, I have here creative tools, and then goes on to explain them. I've got to leap way back to the first glimmer of your interest in this work, of all the things you've done in your career? Can you remember when one day you were nice, normal Mani, and the next day your head was in the potential of this particular innovation?
Yeah, so it's actually quite interesting. So I studied Indian classical music when I was younger, and I didn't really think much of it. But I think now it kind of just happens to be one of the pieces of the puzzle that fits really well, and gives me that like understanding of what music can do for people and how it impacts us. And at the same time, I'm an engineer by trade, a software engineer. I like building things and creating things. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a creative musician, and that's where, but I do have, I think, ideas, and I have this underlying urge that I think as tools should be good so that the learning curve required to express oneself should be very, very small. And what that really means is that like a lot of people have insane imagination and they can think of all these things, but a lot of the time they're restricted by, you have to go learn how to paint before you can paint, but you have the idea of the painting way before that. So if we can make the tools better, we can make our creative output greater and far more interesting. And that's where the urge to build creator tools comes from.
No, I love that. I love that whole notion. Almost everything that I'm still trying to do that requires my abilities to expand into the digital space is like learning how to put on and tie my shoes for the first time, and yet I have help who trying to make it easy for me, and I'm just projecting out now to the millions of people who are creative, and most of us are more than we know, and we've kind of put the stopper in it. We've been discouraged because we just can't seem to climb that curve. And your vision, as I'm hearing it, is to help us do that. Thank you. And the other point I want to make, though, is this wonderful connection that you've made between the study and the experiencing of classical Indian music, and how that's married with your technical abilities. Let's talk about the technical side. When did you know that was your forte? Before you went to university, further back, or as you were there, did you discover it, being a technical?
So I've always enjoyed building things and trying to figure out how and why things work the way they do. I have this joke that like I am interested in anything that plugs into your wall, whether that's your fridge or your washing machine or your toaster or whatever. And those things are getting smarter and smarter.
Yeah.
But I'm by no means like a hardware person. I don't have expertise in hardware. Software just makes it easy for me to express like what I want to build. Like I can think of an idea and create it myself. And that sort of like creative power is the kind of thing that we hope to deliver with our music tools to people who want to express themselves. And that to me is really exciting.
Yeah, I can see that. First, you must have really made your parents nervous as they saw you heading to the next thing that was plugged in. What's Mani's going to open this up and find out why the refrigerator goes purr.
Oh yeah, I was very good at opening things, not very good at putting them back together. So yeah. There's lots of stories.
So, and I would say in some ways, what little I know about software engineering is that trial and error is a very big part of it. There are an awful lot of things I suspected as you were beginning to write code for perhaps some of the simplest things you wanted to build, that you had to rebuild until it worked. Is that true?
Yeah. So one of the first projects I launched a long time ago it was a website that was like an online time capsule. I didn't know much at the time. on how I might go about building it. But there's like, we live in an age where there's like all these resources available online, but sometimes it's really hard to navigate those resources. But I think if you like, there's two ways to learn. There's a way to learn, which is that you go learn a skill by itself, and then you try to apply it, which I find quite boring. I think there's a place for that. I prefer to learn with like references and reference manuals. So you try to build something, and then when you get stuck, you try to figure out where you're stuck. And that way you have this ongoing motivation to not give up, and keeps you chugging along.
And how did that build work out, that first entry into the web?
As it didn't really go anywhere.
Your investors are asking me to ask you that. No, I'm kidding.
Right. I mean, looking back, so this was like 15 years ago. So looking back, I think one of the boldest things that I did at the time was reach out to a ton of people that I didn't know, randomly, like cold emails, and saying, "Hey, look, I built this really cool thing. You should totally use it." But now I look back and I go, hey, like, this is how I would improve it. And surely there were all these holes, but it did lead to interesting opportunities. So I met a couple of people who were in the media space at the time, who were doing film production, who were excited about the idea. But instead I helped them build out, their projects instead. And that's kind of how I grew into the space. And actually and then we turned into creating value and creating useful projects. So I did so in like 2015, I was working on a project called Refugee Aid App, which is called Ref Aid for short. And it's one of the largest global aid syndicate apps in the world right now. And it was recently featured in a museum in New York as part of Design for Peace.
Wonderful.
And that was quite rewarding, actually, because I think at the time in 2015, when the refugee crisis started, a lot of people had this impression in the West that refugees don't have resources or access, they don't have mobile phones or whatever. But when you dig deeper, you realize that they are connected. They have phones, and they are on WhatsApp, and they use apps, and they just need a little help to stabilize.
Close the gaps and stabilize. Yeah. And that's a wonderful alternative view of anyone who's a refugee. And I wish we had a lot more awareness of that were it not for our well-being here, we would be in that boat, and then we would need resources, and we would perhaps have our phone, but we wouldn't know necessarily who to call. And so that notion of being sort of afloat, but barely, and then finding ways on their own, by their own efforts, because you place the resources at hand, is similar to what you said before. Give me the reference manual. They're struggling to solve some huge problems. Give me the reference manual.
Yeah, and we discovered that actually a lot of the aid delivery at the time was being slowed down by the fact that there was no consolidated like database or structure. Like a large NGO didn't necessarily know exactly what resources were available in which local area. And we were able to bring on tons of NGOs and charities and consolidate all the resources in a single app. So that at a time when you needed aid, you would open the app and it will show you what was around you in like a 50-mile radius, whether that's you need legal aid, you need like female sanitary products for free, or you need food, or you need child protective services. And I think that was like a very rewarding project to work on.
How did you handle the languages? Because I'm sure that there are literally hundreds of languages and cultures represented by refugees in any part of the world. They bring their own language, but then these services you're talking about may not be bilingual or multilingual.
Yeah. So in the app itself, we had translations. So we hired translators to translate every posting in the app. And I think it currently has around 10 languages or so. So that's how it kind of grew.
That was a lot of people. Now you worked on that. You're not working on it directly now. When you reached what perhaps you thought was the zenith of your creativity in that wonderful venture, what brought you into Weave?
Yeah, so I think in the past project, I kind of peaked at building the app and the infrastructure, and then the weight was on to acquire more partners and get more data in. And that's when there were other people who were far more skilled at that than me. And that's when I moved on to Weave. And Weave was an interesting project. So it was co-founded by Lars Rasmussen, who is also the co-founder and co-creator of Google Maps, and his now wife. And it stemmed from the idea that, like when you listen to a song, just sometimes, what if you could nudge it to be in sync with whatever activity you were doing?
Yeah.
And it kind of grew from that. So we spent a bunch of time in the fitness space early on, in the digital fitness space, where we would synchronize the music to the intensity of your workout and the cadence of your running or the cadence of your cycling, so that every time your foot hit the ground while you were running, the beat would land on your foot, which is a really interesting like psychological thing, because humans are naturally rhythmic beings, and they're bipedal, and they run in this like 1-2-1-2 kind of thing. And a lot of, or if not most of the music that's produced is in the 4/4 pattern. So
like a march, for example.
And turns out that synchronizing music to your running or your cycling helps you get in flow sooner, and which helps you work out longer, makes you have more fun, feel less fatigue, although you're still working out the same, but it's just being in that zone really pushes you forward. And then we developed some technology around adaptive audio workouts, because we were interested in the idea that this comes from the notion that, like, personal belief that augmented reality, the current industry focus is on like visual augmented reality. But I think audio has a lot of power where it can be non-intrusive and still augment the world around you. So you put on your headphones and you can have, a secondary world. And so we created these like audio guided workouts that would adapt to your performance in real time as you were working out. And we partnered with a running coach, Kelly Roberts. She's awesome. She became the voice of our running app. And then we wanted to go broader into musical experiences and generalizing adaptive music for essentially interactive experiences, because we believe that interactive experiences deserve interactive music. And so since the beginning of this year, we've been expanding and iterating on our tech and expanding into the broader gaming, metaverse, and the interactive experience market.
Wow. Now I am looking out over your shoulder at the direction your mind and talent and your colleagues together, your team is focused. And I'm thinking, that is looking out across the ocean. That's huge. And maybe they're in the Kon-Tiki raft. I don't know. But the fact is that you're truly, in my mind, is your new acquaintance, an explorer, your team of explorers. And you're looking at this tremendous range of possibilities for interactive music. Now, granted, you're going to bring it down to very quickly to practical points, like you did with the fitness, but the potential is vast. As far as you know, is there any other rafts out there with you in this new venture, or are you pretty much the
there's a few projects. There's a few projects out here doing similar things, but in slightly different sort of manner. A lot of the focus is in the other projects is on AI generative music, and I think part of the reason is that music licensing is pretty restrictive. So it's very hard to take a song that's from a record label and use it for an experience that you want. We hope to make that a little bit more straightforward. I think Microsoft or actually Activision recently filed a patent for AI generated music that would respond to in-game events, where they would actually generate new music and new musical structure based on what's happening in your gameplay. But our core belief is that generative tools have a place on the creator side more than the experience side. And by that, I mean, is that generative tools should help creator bring their vision to life quicker and in more elaborate ways than necessarily replacing the full experience. And so our focus is taking songs that you love and that creators, whether that's humans or AI assisted creators, have created, and that you listen to on the radio or maybe you're familiar with, and turning those into interactive and adaptive tracks. So our technology allows you to take a song, we break it down into stems, which are like the Lego building blocks of a song, and we pair them with alternative mixes and alternative stems, and then our engine can use this as the source material and the source content to adapt the song in real time to external events, whether that's your character going underwater or flying in a game, or responding to health events in games, or your car speeding up or slowing down. But the familiarity of the music is where we think a lot of the excitement lies.
I feel that already. I can begin to imagine how much richer using familiar songs would be, because they're your history. You're familiar because you've lived at moments when those songs came into your life. And now if I can bring a song back from my day, let's say the Kingston Trio singing one of their songs and tie it into how I'm feeling and what I'm doing, much differently than just playing their record again. And I use the word record. I think, that tells you where my generation life is. Now, your connection, you're not working alone. Very few of any sort of practitioners that I can think of who even may think of themselves as working alone and should get credit for their particular efforts and what they do, has to be in a context that's a social context in particular that's very supportive. And I'm guessing from your willingness to step out and try these new things that you're in a really good social team experience, as well as have the toolkits, the computers and other servers and other things that you need. Is that so?
Yeah, I mean, we have a super exciting team of combining both software engineers and music producers and audio engineers, and actually a lot of our team has been around with us for over 5 years.
That's a long time in your industry. That
it is, yeah.
That's great. So you really got some deep relationships that you've grown there then.
Yes. And we've also gone through turning into a fully remote company together. Like we used to be in one office, and now we're like fully remote, distributed over, I don't know, 5 different time zones, which is an interesting evolution in our company right now. We have a Grammy nominated producer on our team, Matt Ward. He's awesome. He helps us kind of like, I can't produce music, but I can kind of be like, hey, what if we tried this? And then he will come up with this magical thing that then our engineers will try to get our engine to perform and our music engine to behave that way. And we have this like constant back and forth of what does a human want to do in specific scenarios and how should the machine behave. And I think this collaboration is pretty unique, in my opinion.
That's what a relief to have an idea and ask a what if question and have someone who you know and knows you well say, let me work on it. I'll get back to you. And then boom, they show you what you were asking. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. So that is a wow team, isn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes you discover things like a lot, like I think about music and a lot of intricate details of music that you might not notice in isolation help craft like the full experience. And you just need like a lot of experience in that particular skill and that particular niche to be able to, I don't know, even recreate it. And so having these like really experienced producers on our team has helped us understand music as both like as an art form itself and how we can augment their skills with technology and help create this like new medium.
I hear the word engine. I suspect that's the big aspect. But what would an individual be looking forward to holding or in some way having that interactive experience as a person? Is it going to be something on their head, something that you inject into our arms? How are we going to be someday, and hopefully not very long from now, being one with our music?
Yeah. So when we say engine, it's a music engine. It's almost a AI performer that has been given a recipe, which is a song, and some tools to kind of perform. And over time, we hope that this performer will get smarter and better and be able to adapt to the environment better. But we obviously have to, turn it into a straightforward business case because we are a startup, and we're creating a whole adaptive music distribution network for video games and interactive experiences. So you would embed, or as a game developer, you embed our music engine into your video game, and it opens up our whole library, all of our effects and presets and adaptive music capabilities. And then instead of a game developer producing a specific soundtrack with hooks and triggers, you now write a recipe for how any song should perform. So this way the consumer gets a choice of like the music they want to listen to, and the developer still retains the freedom to like really create an immersive experience. And we think it's exciting for 2 reasons. One, it opens up an alternative revenue stream for music artists. It doesn't take away from existing streaming revenue or performances. And secondly, it gives the game developers ability to focus on the storytelling aspect instead of the sound production aspect. And also it takes away like repetitive, game music. So like if you're playing a video game for the 10th time, you can now have different music and have a different experience.
Oh, really? It would switch up the music. So the 10th time you go out to the dungeon or the castle or whatever in the game, it's different music.
Yeah. So the music library evolves, right? So the user can pick a music, or the game developer can change out the music without necessarily have to change the programming of the experience. So because they've written out these recipes, they've written out the hooks and the triggers, and that is, and that like and so it's really useful for independent indie game developers or smaller game studios who might not have the budgets to compose a specific soundtrack, but they have excellent engineers who can embed our technology and write how they want the song to behave, and they can say things like they can give us environmental cues, or they can give us player statistics in real time, and by us I mean the music engine, and write out instructions on how the music should evolve. And then using our content library, you can play different content every time, and it will be adaptive to the experience.
I am by nature a storyteller, and I'm listening to this now, and I'm thinking, when I would tell a story to my kids, I would produce the sound effects in order to give them a little more sense of what was going on in my imagination, and therefore the story I was making up. Now I hear a storyteller of today as she is thinking out her story and pictures it holistically, which we do when we're imagining a story. We can also imagine and write a recipe for the music in a very different way, so that it much more comports to the story that we want to be told. Is that a fair analysis? Not even an analysis.
That's a very, very good way of explaining it. The interesting thing about audio and music is that even in films, when the music is right, it really creates the environment, and you only tend to notice the music normally when something goes wrong. And so it's this interesting thing that happens in the background that creates the full picture and makes the experience more immersive. But it's hard to construct, and sometimes maybe it's not valued as much as it should. Like a lot of the focus is usually on visual aspects of storytelling, whether that's films or video games. But we're seeing that to create higher engagement. A lot of the newer focus is going on audio and music, and we'll see that push even harder with AR games and VR games, where you're completely surrounded and an immersive experience.
Yeah, because in the world we're living in, outside of the imagined and created world, the film or whatever, we have sound effects all the time. My cat is snoring on the couch here in my office, and I'll pick it up when I'm editing this, and I won't take it out because she's part of my experience and therefore yours. But I guess what I'm getting at is that we humans crave a full accounting of our environment at any moment we arrive in it. I think there's a real need, partly for our survival. Part of our brainstem's going, you hear any tigers growling over there in the bushes? But beyond that, I can feel this need to more fully appreciate the moment we're in terms of all the effects. And this takes us to a word you used a couple of times earlier on, Mani, and that is experiencing the emotion, the feeling that music helps us do, but having that be the music interacting with our feelings. So we provide the feelings as the individual listener, or don't we? I mean, there are feelings ultimately that you're reaching into, and then sort of in training, the music's feelings, our feelings. And that's when you get that effect that you mentioned earlier from the runner with Kelly's approach to use of your product.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned feelings, because I think, this is a personal belief, but I find that all or a lot of the music recommendation systems right now work on the basis of what you're feeling right now. So they will say, okay, this is a sad playlist, this is a happy playlist, this is a morning playlist, or this is a playlist for when you're chilling with friends or whatever. But I wonder if music recommendation systems should be more on what is the kind of feeling I want to create, which gives the control to the user. Yes. And that's what good storytellers do. A good film producer, a good games producer, they try to capture what is the feeling I want the player to experience. And that's where I think audio plays a huge role in helping create that emotion.
I get it. I'm watching the clock, and I don't want to do this for at least the rest of the day, but I can't for the sake of the length of the podcast. But I do want to now tie what you've just said and everything you've said before into the human way of learning. Is there a possibility that there's some connection between what you've done and doing, and in this case, using music to enhance the chance that someone's going to learn more fully and have that learning stick more firmly because you've helped them entrain these emotions with something called music?
I think everybody learns things differently.
Yes.
Everybody absorbs information a little bit differently. I think a lot of potentially regulating emotions can be achieved with music, and so that might be another use case or an approach. I know there's some research happening into how to use music to sort of like respond to emotions, and help control or modulate emotions. That's kind of interesting. But I don't know, in terms of, it's in similar to our fitness case, it's the getting in the zone part, and
the zone.
I find that like being able to isolate and disconnect from everything else happening around you and focusing on that experience. Audio helps a lot. Music helps a lot.
And that's exactly what, we teachers strive for. And in one way or another, not even depending on the age of people we're working with, we crave, from our standpoint, being able to create circumstances within which the learner can be in the zone. But in that case, they're getting it. The lights are lighting in their eyes. They don't want the bell to ring and end the class because they're finally feeling that feeling, which does, if there's at least some subliminal music that we could be play into they could extend that zone longer. And I certainly am not expert in the research on learning, but my guess is that the longer any of us can stay in that moment of high performance learning, that will stick with us and we'll be able to use it much sooner, or eventually if it'll come out in the circumstances we're facing and we go, oh yeah, I remember that. And I spent my whole career, as did Peter Vail, creating these exercises, we called them, for within our management and leadership classes, where students could feel, even for 15 minutes, that the high of puzzle solving or seeing, the other side of a case and going, wow, how come how did we miss that? So I'm capitalizing on your patience to talk my own field, but I'm just wondering, as we're concluding at this point, is it the future that we could also see this for ways of enhancing learning?
I think it's quite possible, because it ties into this interesting concept of anticipation and reward.
Yes.
And a good storytelling, a good story, a good movie, a good game does this very well. They would create some tension, increase your anticipation, and then reward you. Like if a game level is too hard, you will give up and not come back to it. So it just needs to be the right amount of hard. It's the same thing in music. Your brain rewards you if you're able to predict the the beat pattern, and that's why choruses get repeated. Like a DJ will do a build up and create a drop, and your brain will reward you for like knowing that the drop was coming and now it's there. And sometimes the DJ will play around and they will extend the build up, and your brain will get doubly excited. But you do it if you do it too much and the reward doesn't come, then you're quite disappointed. I think the same pattern
you
can be applied to learning.
You throw your red cup at the DJ.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to make fun of it, but you're right on to the point. Exactly the point.
And I think that can be applied to learning too, right? You come up to a new challenge, and then you expect some outcome. But you want to make sure that there's a reward, or whether it's like an actual physical reward or whatever is there. And I think this continuous anticipation build up reward mechanism is an interesting learning methodology to explore.
It is. Why don't you and I start another company, and we'll we'll make that happen in the world. No, you stay with your colleagues in Weave. It's a terrific experience. You're having a great sounding company who's out there, and you're not on the raft Kentucky. You're already in a very secure tugboat. How's that? And the ocean liner is ahead. So have I tortured enough analogies here to say, before you don't want to hang up on me before I say goodbye?
No, I think the ocean is vast and deep. We're currently fundraising to build a bigger ship. So if any of your listeners are interested in our music technology, or to partner with, or to help us with our next funding round, that'll be an exciting conversation we'd love to have.
You go to
Weave.io, weav.io.
And you left out the E. I got to know why before we end this conversation. WEAV. Oh, you left an E in there?
WEAV. There's no second E at the end.
Oh. Is that because of like an international pronunciation spelling, or is that a gimmick?
It's a gimmick, but it's also a 4-letter word, and a shorter domain. And we have our own music format, and music format extension, or like digital format extensions, are usually 3 or 4 letters, so it kind of fits it well there as well.
Very smart. Very smart. Well, my name is DAV. No,
dude, we get this confusion a lot.
I love it though. See, that's a nice hook, isn't it? Though, I mean, people have to ask you, like I just did. Well, where's the E? And then you have a great conversation about this emerging startup company, and you want friends, you want investors, you want attention. And I will say in that regard, again, before we stop the recording, that one reason I got to know about you, and now I'm happy to know you, is Lizzie Freudman, who is helping your firm get attention. Is that not so?
Yeah, so Lizzie's been helping us for almost 6 months, a little bit longer even, with our like online presence and reaching some of our local partners in New Orleans, and some artists out in New Orleans to onboard onto our platform. It's super exciting.
Yeah, Lizzie was in my podcast twice now, and now you're going to be in it. And perhaps we'll come back and as you signal another accomplishment, or even if you don't, and we'll continue our conversation. Is that okay with you, Manny?
I'm definitely happy to. Yeah, we'll see if we get on a bigger boat and tell the story.
Well, you've been listening to Mansimran Singh.
There we go.
And David Fearon butchering that name. But it's been fun, and thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Practice Podcast. where we discuss practice with a capital P. If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Automatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to enactionresearch.com/podcast-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to enactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Oh, and one more thing. How could I forget? The book on practice as a way of being is available now in digital form, something that would be new, like podcasting to many of us. And it's a great way of learning more and more about what this podcast presented when Peter Vale and I originated it several years ago. So please come to mylibrary.world/practice, and you'll see what I mean. Thank you.